Welcome to France 24, everyone, in the France 24 debate. I'm Jeannie Godula. Well, it's been 2 days now since Emmanuel Macron made history, the first to become president here in France without the help of an established party, the first to reach the Élysée presidential palace, having never been elected to any office before, and the youngest French leader since Napoleon. But now that the confetti has settled and the French and European flags have been put away, the hard work really begins. Macron's greatest weakness going into the presidential election is his greatest weakness still. He has to go from having literally 0 MPs, because he still doesn't even have a political party, to a working majority in parliament, and this in just 4 weeks' time. So, how does he get there? And is his win just a hiccup in the business as usual of France's 2 main political parties, or a seismic shift that will shake up French politics for years? That is the subject of tonight's debate. Well, to talk more about this with me tonight, I'm joined on the set by Julie de Pimodon. You are the founder of Fluicity. That's an application that helps citizens dialogue with elected officials. Famke Krummuller, you are the co-founder and the head of political intelligence risk management firm Open Cities. Alexis Poulain, hello. You are the co-founder of online magazine Le Monde Moderne, or The Modern World. And Bruno Bernard, hello Bruno. You are the deputy chief of staff at the mayor's office of the 9th arrondissement here in Paris. And you're also part of the conservative right party, Les Républicains. Well, Macron's task now is forming a government, winning the legislative elections. All 577 seats in Parliament are up for grabs. The first task at hand will be getting not just the majority, but the candidates. He has to find these almost 600 people. Julie, you have your finger on the pulse of what people are thinking. How realistic is that?
I do think it's quite realistic, because I think Macron's methodology in the way he co-constructed his program was really close to what people wanted. He actually did this Grande Marche to really understand on the field what people wanted. And I think this is the way forward. I think today's politics needs more doers, maybe least thinkers, and really need to be closer to the people when thinking. So I think a lot of people want to join this march and really join the movement as quickly as possible.
And Macron's plan seems to tap into what Julie was saying, because he has said he wants to make at least half of these candidates normal people, if you like, not politicians, and not to say that politicians aren't normal. Alexi, do you think that the French people are willing to put their trust in someone who's never held office before? So many people?
I think, yeah, I guess it's the time. That's why Macron's success is coming from. I think the timing is right. People are fed up with professional politicians like Manuel Valls coming back, from I support my candidate, I don't care about my candidate, oh, I want to join En Marche. People like Dupont-Aignan. I mean, you see that professional politicians are here for the business of being politicians, not really about finding solution or being a doer, as you just said. So I think that the time is right, and you have other movement like Ma Voix, which is going to present some candidate from the public as well, and there'll be a big renewal. The big difficulty for Macron will be how to manage expectation and big egos like the one of Valls, people from the PS, people from the Républicains that might want to join, but he wants to be the new face. He wants to be a new movement. So that's very tricky now.
Now, you mentioned Valls. Just to remind our viewers, Emmanuel Valls, of course, is the former socialist prime minister. Emmanuel Macron ran as a centrist, stepping away from the Socialist Party. But now big-name politicians like Manuel Valls are trying to get on board his movement. Valls, of course, was in charge when Emmanuel Macron was economy minister before he stepped away to create his own movement. Valls and Macron famously do not get along, but now the former prime minister is turning his back on the socialists. Let's listen.
I will be a candidate for the presidential majority. You've asked me for a clear response, which is I want to sign up for Emmanuel Macron's movement, the Republic on the Move, because I am in favour of the Republic. The Socialist Party is dead and behind us, not its history or values, but it needs to move forward. Today, what is essential is to give a large and coherent majority, without rebellion, so that Macron can govern.
Manuel Valls, they're saying he wants to run for a seat in Parliament, something that might not be that easy. The man who is actually in charge of the Republic on the Move, that's the Macron's movement's panel, assessing the candidates, said Valls' candidacy will be treated like anyone else's. I guess the question is, does Macron not want a former prime minister on his side? Femke?
I think he's actually facing a huge dilemma here, because on the one hand, he presented himself as, representing political renewal, neither being too close to the Socialist Party, which he quit just last year, or on the right. And now he has this heavyweight from the Socialist Party who was prime minister trying to join him. So that's somewhat contradictory to what Macron promised in terms of political renewal. On the other hand, politically, Valls is very close to what Macron is defending, and excluding him would essentially mean excluding people that are close to Valls, which might also strategically be difficult. So,
Bruno, how big a gamble is this for Manuel Valls? So what's the likelihood he might be refused his candidacy?
Well, I think Valls is actually, fighting for his survival, survival of his particular
because this is a man
career.
who lost his own party's primary, again, just to remind our
Yeah, against Benoît Hamon, after having spent a lot of time as prime minister. So it's quite a desperate move from Manuel Valls, and quite sad, actually, to to see a statesman like himself having to go on the radio and beg for Emmanuel Macron.
He didn't beg. I mean, he was on radio and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm joining En Marche," and then Macron said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a minute."
That's what I call begging. I mean, he went on the air.
Well, he put a foot in the door and
he tried to force himself in the En Marche system, and got rebuffed. Which is even worse.
The big question mark, will be the people that Macron will choose as prime minister and set the tone for the government. And I don't think it'd be wise for him to take former people from the socialist government of Manuel Valls or Bernard Cazeneuve. I think people want something new. That's what they expect. That's what he sold during the campaign. So that will be very tricky. And he said, you have to the French people, you have to expect new faces. So that's something that will actually be a break from the old to the new world.
Invent politicians out of thin air.
Indeed, especially a prime minister, which is a key post.
Yeah, and that's why he said he wanted an experienced person who knew how the parliament works, so we can expect someone who's already been in office. And of course, this will bring down this whole renewal, new faces theme that's going on at the moment, because the moment he nominates his prime minister an experienced politician, whereas it's a man or a woman, he won't be able to play that card anymore.
I'd say he's again trying to kind of square the circle here by doing that, because he needs to also reassure people that he's able to govern somebody who is experienced. So that's in favor of what he's doing. On the other hand, as you mentioned, it's against what he promised in terms of renewal. So
if we played a game and had to throw out a name for who the prime minister might be, who would you say, Julie? Any thoughts?
I hope a woman.
A woman, Christine Lagarde, perhaps, head of the IMF? Alexei, no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, she's too colored by the Sarkozy era. Might be someone older with experience, a woman, as you said, or not, but coming from either or one of the big parties, so that would be the bigger question mark.
Well, I think
give us a name.
Well, that's well. How about you? Give us a name.
I think Jean-Louis Borloo would make a decent candidate for him. He's acceptable for the right as well as for the left. Whereas, for example, François Bayrou would be a complete no-no for the right.
You mentioned the two main parties, and there is a real thorn in Macron's side, is, of course, the Conservative Party, Les Républicains, which seems, in my mind, to be sort of angling with these parliamentary elections as a sort of third round of the presidency, if you like, trying to get their prime minister, if they can, in place. What do you think of that? Do you think that they really have a card to play here, as we say in French, and carte à jouer? Or is it, will they, how do you think they're going to do, Les Républicains, in the parliamentary elections, Julie?
I really want to see a surprise there. I think a lot of people that were close to Macron's ideas, when you look at, for instance, all the candidates and all the political representatives that were really behind his ideas when talking about participative democracy and openness to the rest of the parties. You really hope that a lot of people will join, but it's really not my role to kind of guess on what's going to happen politically there, I guess.
How about you? This is your party, after all. What do you think?
I think we're going to win.
You think they're probably going to, right, they're probably going to win, but win what? A full majority?
I think we'll have enough MPs to either force Emmanuel Macron into a coalition or a proper majority, as you said, and have our own prime minister. Yeah. Because the thing is that you have to bear in mind is that the Républicains are still in shape, whereas the Socialist Party is dead and gone, as Manuel Valls said.
Indeed. Still in shape, it's true. And they are, many could argue that Manuel Valls' positions, at least economically, are very close to some of the positions that were put forth, for example, by François Fillon, who was the Conservative candidate. We do find common themes there. And there are some Conservative politicians as well, I'm thinking like Bruno Le Maire, who have already lined up behind Macron as well. And yet not without a threat, a veiled threat, we might say, saying, OK, we'll come on board, but only if there is a Conservative prime minister. Will Macron accept that kind of deal? Okay.
Just quickly wanted to make a quick point as well. I mean, if he actually chooses somebody who has a background from the Republican Party as his prime minister, then he might split that party too, to a certain extent. It could be a strategy on his side. In either way, any scenario which does not involve a full majority for his own movement will imply that in one way or another he will be dependent on the Republicans. So they will be in the position of strength in the next parliament.
Alexei?
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. The legislative will be key to what's going to happen with the start, the 100 days of Emmanuel Macron. Question mark is how many people from Les Républicains will move to En Marche? Will there be any? Also, they already stated that they were keen to join, but depending on the choice of this, and will the choice depend on the election? I'm not sure. We'll see what's going to happen next.
And this is a real issue, of course, for the Conservatives as well, because the man who is in charge of actually getting the Les Républicains, the Conservative candidates, in line for the parliamentary election is named François. He is none too pleased about these noises from other Conservatives, to the point where he actually went on to threaten to put another Conservative candidate up against whichever Conservatives decide to step away and run with Macron's actual party.
Which is fair. I mean,
well, let's first listen to what he said, and then we'll come right back. Let's take a listen.
Those who choose Emmanuel Macron will do as they wish. We're in a free country, but they won't be in the Les Républicains team. That's normal.
Alexei, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, I think it's fair. It's what I mean. Macron did a spectacular move, getting the centrist from the Parti Socialiste, Socialist Party. I don't think he will manage to do the same move with Les Républicains because they will be tougher on you stay either you're with us or against us if you go to En Marche. So that's the one thing to do if you want your party to survive in this reshaping of French politics right now.
We've been talking a lot about this political maneuvering, but there's also something very important to remember in all of this, and that is, of course, the French people, what they want, what they're hoping for, what they need to see happen here in France. Again, Julie, I'll turn to you because this is your specialty. What is that really? What are they hoping for, and can they get it from this parliament that's going to be voted in a month's time?
I think it's really interesting to look at the abstention rates here that were really a record in the Fifth Republic. You had 24% of people that didn't go vote. You had about 11.4% that people voted blank. So altogether, you have 16 million people that actually didn't position themselves.
More than Marine Le Pen herself got, more than the number two.
Which is the second party after Emmanuel Macron. So there is a real challenge right now to really understand what those people want. And I think the next president and the next government as a whole needs to use civic technology and all those new participative democratic tools that are available and that work really well outside in the US, for instance, to really get to those people, especially the young people, to involve them and make them like politics.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that before we move on?
Yeah, I think it's a new decade, and you need to change the game. You see, young people, I think, were interested in politics with Mélenchon. You see, les Insoumis, I think a lot of young voters, where it was their first campaign, they were very happy to go for the leftish, the more leftish candidate that was there. But En Marche also had this kind of appeal, and same with Le Front National. A lot of people that voted for Marine Le Pen were young voters. But the problem is that with the choice, which was a non-choice, because if you're from Socialist Party or Les Républicains, you had a tough choice for the second round. You see that the rules need to change. How we elect a president, how we do politics together, what's policy about. Is it about more growth? Is it about fighting again for a seat? Or is it about living together and looking ahead in the same direction in the future?
Indeed.
You ask what the French wanted from that president. The next day, the day after he got elected, a poll was released saying that 63% of the French people didn't want Emmanuel Macron to have a majority in parliament. So it's quite contradictory to the fact that they just elected him.
I think there was that, of course, speaks to the fact that many people were voting not for Emmanuel Macron, but against Marine Le Pen.
Yeah.
I'll add just another poll to highlight the contradiction, because there's another one which asked about the main measures that Emmanuel Macron wants to pass in the first 100 days. And apart from one minor measure, a majority of people want him to pass these measures. And there you see the disconnect, I guess, between awareness of the program and then what the person himself seems to stand for in people's minds.
Just a quick question before we take a quick break. So many people made so much of the fact that this was the first time that two presidential candidates got through to the second round without coming from a major traditional party, either the Socialists or Les Républicains, the conservative right. My question is how do you all see the future of French politics? Are they changed forever?
No, they're not. There will always be a left, there will always be a right. I mean, they might have different names. We might see a bigger centrist party around Emmanuel Macron, that's for sure. I mean, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing had a majority like that. Then it got split in two rights, a more conservative right, Gaullist right, and a more pro-European and liberal right. So it will always revolve around the same themes, you know, being conservative, being more progressive. It just, the names will change, of course. But I don't see the conservative right vanishing or melting itself into the National Front, or even Jean-Luc Mélenchon's leftist party, you know, melting itself in a new form of a socialist party, that's for sure.
You can still ask, I'd say, to what extent the current system is made for what's happening, because it is a presidential two-party system that we have in France, and the president should have, let's say, and that's how the system is made, a big majority in parliament. And when you have a president who's not sure to have a majority in parliament and needs to form coalitions, something that's entirely unprecedented in France, you can ask yourself how well the system actually fits what's going on.
Famke, thank you so much. Thanks to all our panel. We're just going to take a quick break and we're going to talk a bit more about what's next for Emmanuel Macron, particularly when it comes to the European Union, just after this.